An extensive body trail of victims was left by the vicious, cold-blooded, and cruel killer, Cullen Montgomery Baker, across the American frontier. He was a Confederate guerrilla during the Civil War, and when the conflict was over, he continued to fight, ambushing Reconstructionists, murdering former slaves, and terrorizing the states of Texas and Arkansas for 4 years. Baker was born on June 22, 1835, in Weakley County, Tennessee, to John Baker and Elizabeth Baker. His father was a hard-working but impoverished farmer who also had cattle. The family relocated to Clarksville, Arkansas, not long after he was born. In 1839, after only a few years, the family relocated to Texas, finally settling in Davis County. His father obtained a 640-acre property grant there. Despite receiving the property, the family remained destitute, and Cullen was bullied at school because of his homespun trousers and bare feet. Despite his frailty and withdrawal, he began to fight back. He also obtained an ancient handgun and a rusted but functional rifle, and began practicing with both weapons until he was highly skilled. He drank his first alcohol when he was 15 years old, and began challenging both youngsters and men who irritated him to go for your guns. It wasn't long until he was spending most of his time at saloons, where his quick temper led him into a few fights. He was described as a strong drinker, a braggart, a quarrelsome and mean-spirited individual. He was knocked unconscious during one battle by a man named Morgan Culp, who whacked him in the head with a tomahawk. This encounter seems to have temporarily cooled his temper, but it would not stay. In 1856, he stabbed a guy named Wortham to death in an altercation about horses and escaped to Texas. He quickly returned to Arkansas, however, after learning that he was still wanted for murder in the death of Bailey. During his absence, his wife Martha gave birth to a daughter, Louisa Jane, on May 24, 1857. He went to Texas temporarily the next year to fetch his wife and daughter. On July 2, 1860, his wife died, and Baker took their kid to Sulphur County, Texas, leaving her with his in-laws. He didn't see his daughter again. He then joined the Independent Rangers, a guerrilla force loosely affiliated with the Confederate Home Guard. Their mission was to track down and apprehend Confederate Army deserters. Instead, they took advantage of the fact that the majority of the men were away at war and perpetrated crimes such as intimidation, rape, theft, and brutality. Any man with property was deemed an enemy and declared a Unionist. The depredations in certain locations got so severe that everyone who could fled. In November 1864, a small group of largely elderly men, women, and children decided to abandon the chaos and set out west with their teams and goods. They were overtaken by Cullen Baker and the Independent Rangers when they crossed the Saline River in the Ouachita Mountains. Baker and his men allegedly thought their attempt to flee was unpatriotic, but in actuality, they needed little justification to harass them. Baker pulled his pistol and shot and killed the leader of the settler company when they refused to return. He then told the rest of the group that if they agreed to return to their homes, he would not kill anyone else. However, once the surviving settlers returned to Baker's side of the river, he promptly led his rangers in shooting and killing 9 additional men, as well as seizing any valuables. The incident became known as the Saline Massacre. Following that, the locals had had enough and began aggressive measures to eliminate the deadly gang. When the thugs learned of this, they left with their loot and the many horses and mules they had seized. Baker was in a saloon wearing a Confederate hat in Spanish Bluffs, Arkansas, at the end of 1864, when he was approached by 4 African-American Union soldiers who asked for identification. Baker turned to face them, weapon drawn, and shot and killed a sergeant and 3 other troops. According to one report, after the battle, he stumbled upon a group of travelers in Sevier County, Tennessee, on his way home. He began verbally harassing a black woman in the group before shooting and killing her. He subsequently moved to the Sulphur River area of southwestern Arkansas with his wife Martha, where he became the manager of the line ferry. But it would be fleeting. Martha became ill quickly and died on March 1, 1866. According to numerous reports, Baker was devastated by her loss, but it didn't stop him from proposing to Belle Foster, her 16-year-old sister, just 2 months later. Belle turned down his proposal and married Thomas Orr, a school teacher and political leader. Baker then started harassing Orr, picking fights with him, beating him over the head with a tree limb, and going to his classroom to mock, curse, and threaten the guy in front of his students. Reconstruction had begun in Arkansas and Texas by this time, and Baker despised the idea. He and another criminal called Lee Rames formed a group in the Sulphur River bottoms near Bright Star, Arkansas. The gang was claimed to have killed at least 30 persons while committing robbery and murder, many of whom were outnumbered, ambushed, or shot in the back. Baker and his group also went to Texas, where he assassinated John Sammons, who had earlier assassinated a gang member, Seth Rames, the brother of gang member Lee Rames. He also killed Reconstruction Officer W.G. Kirkman and a guy named George W. Barron, who had previously been a member of a posse chasing him. The gang's outlaw spree continued in Queen City, Texas, and Texarkana, Arkansas. On June 1, 1867, he returned to Cass County, where he went into the Rowden General Store, bought some products, and then left without paying. The proprietor, John Rowden, then rode up to Baker's house with a shotgun and demanded money. Baker promised to return and compensate him, but on June 5th, he murdered Rowden instead. Baker then escaped back into Arkansas, where he was accosted by a Union sergeant who recognized him as he boarded a ferry. He murdered the Union officer, but a private escaped and reported the murder. Following this, Baker was fiercely followed by Union forces. On July 25, 1867, he got into a fight with a group of Union soldiers at New Boston, Texas, which swiftly turned violent. Baker was hit in the arm during the ensuing gunfight, but he killed Army Private Albert E. Titus. As a result, a $1,000 reward was offered for his capture, dead or alive. He next traveled to Bright Star, Arkansas in December 1867, where he linked up with 5 men who were organizing a raid on the plantation of Howell Smith, who had lately recruited numerous freed blacks. One of Smith's daughters was stabbed, another was clubbed, and a black man was shot and died during the incident. But Smith resisted, and a gunfight occurred, injuring several raiders, including Baker, who was hit in the leg. In Little Rock, Arkansas, on October 24, 1868, Major P.J. Andrews, Lieutenant H.F. Willis, and an unidentified black man were reportedly killed by Baker and his gang. Sheriff Standell was hurt in the assault. At this point, Lee Rames, Baker's co-leader, had started to question Baker's ability to lead and thought that his actions would bring about the demise of the entire gang. After Rames defied Baker, who eventually capitulated, the gang dispersed in December 1868. Except for Dummy Kirby, every member supported Rames. In January 1869, he and Kirby traveled to Bloomburg, Texas, to Baker's in-laws' home. On January 6, 1869, Cullen Baker and Dummy Kirby would pass away there. It's unclear how they were slain exactly. According to one story, his father-in-law's acquaintances poisoned the men with strychnine by putting it in a bottle of whiskey and some food. Their bodies were then pierced by gunshots. According to a different version, Thomas Orr, with whom Baker had a long-standing dispute, led a small group of men who attacked Baker and Kirby at the Foster residence and shot and killed them. The soldiers were executed, and their bodies were hauled through Bloomburg before being transported to the U.S. Army outpost close to Jefferson, where they were displayed in front of the public. Some of the prize money offered for Baker was reportedly collected by Thomas Orr. Baker was laid to rest in Jefferson, Texas's Oakwood Cemetery. His grave plaque features the Confederate cavalry outfit, even though he deserted from Morgan's squadron. After that, he was romanticized by some for defending Southern honor. However, his track record demonstrates that he was a vicious killer who, regardless of their allegiances, killed everyone who incensed him. According to authorities and historians alike, he is regarded as one of the most brutal killers to have ever lived. His death toll is estimated to be between 50 and 60. What do you think of the video? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button before you go. Thanks for watching.